Well, this week, Palm Island residents commemorated 10 years since the death in custody of Aboriginal man Cameron Doomadgee. The tragedy triggered a riot and a shattering breakdown in relationships between police, residents and the Queensland Government. A decade on, the island and its residents are still trying to heal. Alison Horn has this story from Palm Island, and a warning: it contains images of a deceased Aboriginal person.
To the outside eye, Palm Island is a tropical paradise. With its vast sweeping coastlines and traditional Indigenous lifestyle, it could be a feature of Queensland tourism. But beneath the calm surface lies an unresolved dark history.
It was unprecedented in Australia's history to see any individual, civilians, burning down a police station, a courthouse, police homes.
I have no regrets about what happened.
We're still coming to terms with his death.
It's been years since Jane Doomadgee and Valmay Aplin were together on Palm Island. They're here to mark 10 years since their brother died.
It is very hard, and coming back here, back to the island, it makes you think.
Cameron Doomadgee was taken into custody for being drunk and a public nuisance. Less than an hour after entering the police station, he was dead. An autopsy found he had massive internal injuries, including broken ribs, a ruptured spleen, and his liver was so badly damaged it was almost cleaved in two across his spine. His injuries were compared to those seen in victims of plane crashes.
Everyone in the end really wanted to know what really happened, and everyone also wanted a fair and impartial investigation into what really happened.
Residents suspected Senior Sergeant Chris Hurley caused the death. And when the autopsy results were released, tempers flared.
I'm not going to accept it, and I know a lot of you other people don't. So let's do something.
So this is where the results were read out. What happened then? What went through your mind?
Well, I was in disbelief as to how he died.
And so you took some action?
Yeah, well, there was action taken.
Lex Watton was the riot ringleader. He led furious residents to confront police with sticks and rocks.
There's Palm Island Police Station, well on fire, well alight.
The police station, courthouse and police housing were burnt to the ground. Police feared for their lives. Riot squads were flown in, and the dark events are now infamous in Australian history.
The riot itself was very frightening for all concerned, for the police whose lives were in danger. They had to flee with their families to the safety of the hospital on the island. I'm sure it was very frightening as well for the residents of Palm Island.
There was no real danger towards the police from myself or the locals, and it was just all fabricated.
Chris Hurley became the first police officer in Australian history to be charged over a death in custody. In 2007, he was acquitted of manslaughter charges by an all-white jury. But residents were unsatisfied with the investigation and handling of the death in custody, and relationships were shattered.
There's no doubt that the relationship between police and the residents were damaged for some time after the tragedy of Mulrunji's death and after this riot.
I think there are times in our service history where the relationship with Indigenous Australia has had its low points.
The Queensland Police Service admits mistakes were made.
There's an old saying that you don't learn from successes, you learn from suboptimal outcomes, and without doubt we learnt very many things from our response at Palm Island way back 10 years ago.
Now, new officers undertake an induction to meet community residents, and locals' views are included during the selection process. But rebuilding the relationship is an ongoing struggle.
There's still unresolved grief and loss of trauma that's going to stay there forever until the grief and loss is dealt with.
There'll always be distrust, regardless what police authority is in town, you know, and I think that's something at the end of the day that we have to live with.
Cameron Doomadgee's family say policing is better now than a decade ago, but do they trust officers?
I've got a teenage son now that's always in trouble. I'd rather have one of my sisters with me when I go down with him, because I tell him, you know, I just say, try and stay out of trouble. I'm frightened for your life, you know, I'm just frightened.
Lex Wotton was sentenced to 7 years in jail for his part in the riots. This year, he's launched a class action in the federal court against police and the state of Queensland. He says he's still angry and feels like justice hasn't been done.
There will always be tension because there's not enough communication between police and community, not enough education around role and responsibility towards each other.
It's about healing and dealing with the trauma so people can move on.
In light of the fragile relationship, questions remain about where Palm Island will be in another 10 years' time.
If I'm around, I'd love to see Palm being a nice little prosperous little town. A lot of employment in the town, investment into the town.
I would hope that in 10 years' time that everyone on Palm Island is confident in their police department to provide those policing services to them. That's what I would hope.